Now, you might have just recently come across my channel, so welcome. It's great to have you here. My name is Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan who's living here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico. And just over a year ago, I started this YouTube channel with one goal. And that goal is to play a small role in trying to help the great game of rugby to grow across the world, just by sharing my passion for the game here on YouTube. I'm probably the oldest rugby YouTuber in Mexico, possibly the world, I don't know, but I'm having a lot of fun with this, and it's all because of you, this fantastic community that we're growing. So if you've just come across the channel and you think that's a worthy cause to support, then why not subscribe to the channel and come along with the journey. I'm going to share with you my over 50 plus years of experience with the beautiful game of rugby right across the world. We're going to look at all the things that are relevant to the game of rugby today, follow all the fantastic games and competitions that are going on, and I'll give you my in-depth analysis of it all. Now today I found out that South Africa is ranked number 6 in the world in the area that I'm talking about amongst all the great rugby nations, and that concerned me a little bit because I started thinking about why isn't the success that South Africa is having on the field of rugby not transitioning to the practice off the field of rugby. So I started doing a little bit of research, and what I found out has been a little bit disturbing. I want to share it with you today, and I want to get your views and opinions. So let's get into it. Now, just because you win back-to-back Rugby World Cups and you beat all of the teams or most of the teams that you play against at the moment, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's translating into success off the field. And one of the things I always have in mind as an ex-global corporate executive is to look at how businesses are run and how things are growing or not growing in some instances. And I've been taking a pretty close look at World Rugby over the last 12 months, see how they're managing the game, marketing the game, bringing new members of the public into the game, and maybe looking at some of the holes where they've got to do a little bit of work. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about brand values of sporting teams, and we're going to start off looking at the South African team. Now, it might be helpful for some of you if you actually know what the definition of brand value is. Now, brand value is the monetary value associated with your brand if you were to sell it to somebody. It depends what the market's prepared to pay for it. And imagine if you were selling your business to another business in a merger or an acquisition process, it's what that other business is prepared to pay for your brand. So that's the definition of the brand value. Now, the brand value is made up of a lot of things. It's not just the revenue that comes in, it's also the goodwill, it's the fan base, the customer base across the world, and all those other activities that go into establishing a brand value. So we've also got to think about that in this conversation. Now, of course, South Africa have won the last 2 back-to-back World Cups. So when the brand value assessment came out at the end of last year, I was quite interested to read this and a little bit surprised, and we'll go through that reason right now. So if we have a look at the brand values of some of the top rugby nations in the world, and we'll start off at South Africa, who are currently in 6th position, and this dropped down from at the end of last year. And the current value of the South African Springboks brand is $117 million US. Now, does that surprise you? It certainly surprises me for such a great rugby brand that they are. Okay, so let's go through some of the other brand values in the top 5 nations in World Rugby at the moment as they stand. And in 5th place, might be surprising to some of you, it's Wales with a brand value of $131 million US. Does that surprise you that Wales is in 5th place? Now, moving on to number 4, and in 4th place is Ireland with a brand value currently of $150 million US. Then moving on to 3rd place, and we have France with $159 million brand value. And then we move on to 2nd place, and we have England at $263 million. And in the number 1 spot, we have the New Zealand All Blacks with a current brand value of $282 million. Now there's a couple of things that surprise me here, is that first of all South Africa is down in 6th position, and a lot of that has to do with the strength of the rand against the US dollar. That's one of the things that discounts heavily for the South African brand. But on another occasion, back-to-back world champions, for me, they should be faring a lot better than this. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done behind the scenes in terms of marketing, exposure and growth of that brand across the world of rugby, particularly with such the growth of supporters that the South African Springboks enjoy now across the world, as well as the number of registered players that's growing all the time in South Africa. For me, it's disappointing to see South Africa in 6th position, and I think a lot of work needs to be done both in the South African Rugby Union side of things, but also at the level of World Rugby. They need to be supporting the world champions a lot more. And okay, so there's the brand values of the top 10 rugby nations as they stand. You can see the other ones there with Wallabies, etc., Japan down to Italy. Quite surprising and quite low as far as I'm concerned. Now, if we have a look at sports in general, who's the #1 brand value sporting team in the world, do you think? Well, it happens to be the Dallas Cowboys, with a brand value currently of 9.2 billion US dollars. And in second place is the New York Yankees with a brand value of 7.1 billion US dollars. Incredible, isn't it? Okay, so this got me thinking. Let's look at the exposure that these teams get and who's watching what sport today across the world. So I did some research on this and I looked up the top 10 most viewed sports in world today. Now don't be confused, this is viewing online. This is not popular in terms of how many people follow the sport across the world. It's who's actually watching on television, on streaming services, on all sorts of different devices. And the top 10 are as follows. In #1 spot, it's football, or soccer as some people call it across the world. In the second spot, it's cricket. In third spot, it's field hockey. Does that surprise you, being right up there in #3? #4 is tennis, 5 is volleyball, 6 is table tennis, 7 is baseball, 8 is golf, 9 is basketball, and number 10 is NFL. So as you can see, there's no rugby on the list there. Now there's no doubt about it that the Rugby World Cup every 4 years has a great impact on the game. It brings a lot more viewers to the game, and it also brings a lot more players into the game. For instance, last year at the time of the Rugby World Cup, there was 5.8 million registered players across the world. After the Rugby World Cup, that shot up to 8.4 million registered players across the world. So there's no doubt about it, the Rugby World Cup every 4 years is a great thing for the sport, but then we fall back into a hole, and it's the rugby enthusiasts, the ones that have been there all the time, that continue to support the game at the domestic and international level. And that's why we see brands like the All Blacks and France and England, down to South Africa and the others, not having the kind of brand value that I would expect as a businessman to actually be achieving in the world of sport. And I think a lot of emphasis needs to go into this from World Rugby to build up the business side of the game across the world. It's all very well today. We have rugby in 132 countries around the world. The unions are growing, but what investment is going into those unions, and how can that be better supported? So there's no surprise to me that at the moment, given the current state of the World Rugby Administration, that a country like South Africa, with the great success it's having on the field, is not transferring that success off the field. And that's something that I think the game really needs to put some energy behind. What can you and I do to change that? And that's always the question I ask. Well, as a YouTuber now, I'm trying to play my role in making the game more popular across the world. One of the limitations I have is that I can't get media access, and I can't get access to the games, so I can show it and analyze it and talk to you about it. And that's one of the things that I think needs to change. We need to look at the way that we're using the footage from games, who's having access to it, and what is it meaning in terms of the growth of the game across the world. So I'm not just saying that from a selfish point of view. I think all YouTubers of a certain level should be able to have access to footage of games, and we shouldn't be talking about copyright strikes and all these other things when we're trying to grow this beautiful sport. As I showed you today, rugby doesn't feature in the top 10 of viewed sport in the world today. To me, that's a crime. We need to change that. And really, with sports like table tennis and field hockey, with no disrespect at all to those sports, I believe that rugby should be above those sports in terms of being viewed around the world. So I would really love to hear from you on this topic. It's all very well that we talk about the rugby championship at the moment and the names of players that are being named in teams. I want to go a little bit deeper into the sport of rugby, find out what's making it tick over and where are the things that we can all work on to improve this. What do you think we need to do to increase the brand value of these fantastic rugby teams that you and I watch all the time across the world? How do we bring new viewers into the game? And what do you think World Rugby needs to do to help champion teams like South Africa to increase their value in the world of sport? I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. So there we go. There's my thoughts around what's going on in the world of rugby, and I would like to see South Africa as a brand being able to get a lot greater return on their investment and all the effort that's going on into that team on the field and translating to actual results off the field as well. Now let me know in the comments. I read all the comments and I'm doing my best to respond to them all. I had over 800 comments to one of my last videos. I spend several hours a day responding to you in the comments, so please don't be shy to put down your thoughts and opinions because they're always respected here on Inside Rugby with Mark. Now, if you can help me on my journey to play a small role in growing the great game across the world, please choose one or more of these options to help me out on this channel. I would be very, very grateful. And if you haven't yet crossed that bridge to hit the subscribe button, please do it because it makes a world of difference for a little guy like me on YouTube, that's for sure. Now, I'll be back again really soon. We've got plenty to talk about when it comes to the Rugby Championship and the last 2 rounds of that. So stay tuned to me here on Inside Rugby for my in-depth analysis. I bring you over 50 years of rugby experience from across the world, and that's something that you shouldn't shy away from. Okay, I'll see you all again very soon from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. It's time to say adios. You stay well, stay safe, keep enjoying your rugby across the world, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye for now.